but it is insurance against what if the next thing doesn't come up soon. So you got to protect yourself first. I mean, that's really, you got to look out for yourself, and your company should want you back because obviously you're wanting to be available to them. That's really great, but
so basically, I'm still sort of kind of on hold with them, go for another company, and if I get a job with them, then sever the ties.
Sure, you could leave the next one, but just because you have this possibility of going to a new job, or going back to your old job, it doesn't mean that when you get into the new one thinking that it's temporary, that you're not going to later decide the new one's actually better.
No, I understand that, but the process of finding that fit is very time consuming in this economy, and it really, I mean, I forgive me for saying this in public, but I suppose I could cheat at the system and just continue to plug in insincere job searches just to keep doing it in order to buy myself time to really find the job I want.
Well, it's really not that, though. I mean, you have to, they have ways to check whether you actually applied to places. So first of all, you want to make sure any place that you put down you applied is the place you applied. But I think that you have to think more expansively about, maximizing your opportunities. And maximizing your opportunity to support yourself is going to be having that unemployment in place and getting yourself into the sure thing as opposed to the maybe.
And you also have to understand that your former employer at this point is not your friend. They're not necessarily your enemy. Well, they're not your friend. The reason they're not your friend is because this is, and we didn't mention this earlier, a 100% employer-financed program. Employers in Virginia and nationwide pay taxes to the federal government, which in turn come back, part of it anyway, maybe 30 cents on the dollar or less, comes back to Virginia to fund the administration of the program and their salaries. And Virginia employers pay taxes to the state government that are put in a special trust fund for the benefits. And the more successful claims that are paid for employees of a particular employer, the higher their tax rate goes. That gives them an incentive to contest these claims. And some claims are unjustified and they should be contested. A lot are not, are fully justified and shouldn't be. But it is an adversary system because the employer does pay for every time a claim is successful, their tax rate goes up. So they're not necessarily your enemies, but they're not your friends. I think as Carol says, you have to look out for yourself and your family first.
Right, that will come out when you ask for a reference.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Back here and back in the front.
What can a person do, let's say they're not unemployed, but their employer's only giving them 2 days of work or 3 days of work?
Take the 2 days to 3 days. If it's less than what you would get from unemployment compensation, file a claim for partial unemployment compensation.
You may not know. You may not know exactly what your unemployment amount would be. But the most it would be is $378 plus 25, right?
Right, but would the employer say you can't file because you're still working with us?
Nope.
It's just not someone for work.
File for partial unemployment, and then what happens is that the tricky thing about that, once you file, is that you have to take all the hours that the job offers you. So say right now they're offering you 2 days a week, and then you file for partial unemployment, and they say, okay, we'll give you 3 days, okay? You have to take that third day. You have to actually take them up on any offer, because otherwise that will lose up your claim. But one thing that's unique about partial unemployment, make sure I have it right, is that you don't have to do the job searches if you've been approved for partial unemployment. You don't have to be looking for something else if you're actually working all the hours of that job.
Because I have a client that is in that situation for the past 2 months. They've just been working maybe 2 days, 3 days.
And so the other thing that's sad about that scenario, right, is that the partial unemployment claim will only start from the time that
Right, but his employer has told him that he can't file for unemployment.
he should just do it.
We actually do have the ability to retroactive or
Oh,
partial
do
claim.
partial. Oh, good. 4 weeks. Okay.
And the other sad thing about it is people who are getting 1 day, 2 days a week will quit their job and file for full unemployment compensation, and those folks are going to get, in all likelihood, denied because it was a voluntary quit without good cause. And it's almost impossible to defend that unless, for example, they weren't being paid minimum wage. I got a case like that recently, TGI Thursdays. If you quit a job, only because it's 1 or 2 days a week, instead of filing for partial unemployment compensation, you're likely going to get denied, and that's going to be upheld as a denial.
The employer's not in charge of whether the person can file.
Yeah.
Right, but the employer will go back telling them, well, you're let go, or, you're fired because he did apply.
Well, they did, right? So if the person files for partial unemployment and then the employer goes ahead and fires the person, I would suspect that person, they would have a hard time showing the person was fired from his contract. So in that case, then that person turns a partial claim into a full claim. And because they're only getting, a few hours a week, chances are the full claim is going to turn out to be worth more money than the partial. So they probably won't end up in a worse situation, hopefully.
How long does that process take?
Partial. You talking about final partial?
Yeah, you file for a partial, you lose your job because of that, and then they said you were fired. You got to go through this whole process, don't you, up to the deputy?
Yeah, if it's a contested claim, meaning they say, well, we fired or this person quit, there's the deputy level hearing. Right now, we're scheduling those out 3 to 4 weeks. Then after that, it's about a 10-day after the hearing before the decision. They have within 10 days to render that decision. So if it's a contested claim, yeah, it's going to be drawn out 5-6 weeks before you get the results if it's contested.
Okay. Is it spelled out in the paperwork about partial claims and not having to file? Because I called it, I didn't write it down, so I'm guilty. But I did call, and they said, oh yeah, you have to look for work. And I said, but I'm working 2 days a week. They said, well, you have to look for work. I said,
But here's terminology gets confused because there's a partial claim, okay? That's when your normal traditional hours have been reduced. I was working 40 hours a week, now I'm working 15. You have a right to file a partial claim because you're not totally unemployed, okay? But if you are totally unemployed from one company, but you're working part-time somewhere else, you can still draw benefits. And I've heard that referred to as a partial claim, but it's not truly a partial claim. It's a total claim, full claim with reduced benefits because you're deducting out your part-time earnings. So that may have been lost in the communication that they didn't interpret what you were saying is my regular employers reduced my hours, okay? Or
it doesn't matter. I didn't write it down and I didn't document it, so I'll take the hit for that. Okay.
But we do, in a partial, total claims we have to take effect of the week in which you file to go forward. Partial claims, we do have some leeway to go back 4 weeks to start the effective date then and go forward. And basically, with partial claims, we send the forms to your employer. They fill them out in 2-week increments. They give it to you. You certify whether or not you had any other earnings. You sign it and you submit that for payment. There's no job search requirement that's in a partial claim scenario.
What if the employer doesn't give you the form?
Well, if the employer doesn't give you the form, refuses, hey, I'm not filling these forms out, I can't go there and make them, but I can make attempts, and I can document my attempts as an agency to get that information from the employer. After 2 attempts, and they're refusing, I'm going to take your affidavit, your statement, and process your claim that way.
When you were doing the weekly reports, everything is done by the internet these days. So if you posted your resume, if you applied online, all of those count, correct?
They count, but what you want to be leery of are potentially every job contact that you make has to be subject to verification. So if you apply and you have no way of knowing who you're applying with or how to get back in touch with them, we're not going to be able to verify that.
But if you have copies of emails and if you have copies of letters that you sent, or phone calls, so if you have, as long as you have the documentation.
Right, and that contact is verifiable, potentially verifiable, that's going to be able to